this video I'm going to show you how I join these slabs of clay together using slip and score to make a slab box. The slabs themselves are leather hard, so they do need some way of binding them together. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line them up and figure out exactly where I need to score into the clay. I rolled the slabs out using a 6mm roller guide, so I know that that's the thickness of each of the slabs. So I put the roller guide at the edge of the base slab and then draw a faint line using the needle tool down the edge. This shows me where I need to score. You can score the clay with a serrated rib like this, or a clay scoring tool like this, or a sharp modelling tool like this, or a needle tool, or if you don't have any of these you can just use a regular kitchen fork, that's fine too. My favourite tool for scoring into clay is the serrated rib tool. That's because it's got lots of evenly spaced little points on the edge of the rib, which makes it very easy to score into the clay. You can score quite a large surface area very quickly, and it makes a very even scored pattern on the clay too. But you can see here that I'm using a needle tool just to show that you can do exactly the same thing with a needle tool. It just takes a little bit longer, and it helps with the needle tool if you do sort of a cross hatching. So score one way and then score the other way just to make a really good texture. And then it's a good idea just to brush away any small little burrs of clay that have come off when you've been scoring, just so that they don't get stuck to the slab. And here I'm just scoring into the edge of the side slab too, because both sides need to be scored. You're going to join them together, and the scoring creates a texture so that the clay can key into each other. And then you're also going to apply some clay slip as well, which acts like a bit of a glue. So this is clay slip, and clay slip is basically just water and clay mixed together into a liquid. The best way to make clay slip is to just get some little bone dry pieces of clay and dissolve them into water, and it'll break down into a nice smooth paste. But the clay that I'm using is quite firm leather hard, and I want to make sure that the slip is going to make a really firm bond, so I'm going to use something called paper clay slip. I'm going to make a video on how I make this quite soon, and then when I do I'll put a link in this video to how to make paper clay slip so that you can make your own. The recipe I got from a potter called Martha Grover. She's got a video on how to make it as well, and it's basically 3 ingredients. It's vinegar, toilet paper and bone dry clay mixed together. You blend the toilet paper into the vinegar and then you add the bone dry clay, and it makes this sort of gloopy, slurry type of slip, which acts as a very strong glue when you're trying to bond pieces of clay together. But regardless of whether you're using regular slip or paper clay slip, the next thing to do is to paint the slip onto the scored area of the clay. Whether you're making slab pottery or whether you're attaching a handle to a mug, you paint the slip onto the scored area. If you are joining pieces of clay together that have still got quite a lot of moisture content, it can be okay to just score into the clay and then use a little bit of water on the scored area. But with this clay, like I say, because it's hard, the slabs are quite hard, I'm using quite a thick slip just to make sure that they bond together well. And as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm sort of thinking ahead, and I'm scoring and slipping and scoring the different areas that I'm going to want to join together reasonably quickly. So once I've planned ahead and prepared the surfaces that are going to be joined together, you put the slab into position, just line it up so it's in the right place, and then once you know that it's in the right position, then you can put a bit of gentle but firm pressure onto the slab so that those two scored areas will bond together. And I'm just putting a little that little slip pot behind the slab there just to prop it up. I mean, actually the slip does a very good job of bonding the slabs together firmly quite quickly, but I just put the pot there just in case the slab did fall. It wouldn't completely separate, the base wouldn't completely separate from the side. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm just slipping and scoring the next side of the slab box, which I want to attach to the base reasonably quickly, because once you've got 3 sides joined together, the whole thing becomes quite a solid structure. So I'm just lining the side up there again, being careful not to wiggle the existing wall around too much, lining it up together and then gently pushing it into place. And then it's a good idea, once you've joined 2 slabs of clay together or 2 pieces of clay together, to add a thin coil of clay to the joint just to reinforce it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just scoring into the surface of the joint. So I'm just roughing up the texture in the actual joint itself, and then just apply a little bit of slip all the way along. And then I'm just putting a little soft coil of clay into the joint, and that's just a way of reinforcing that joint that's been slipped and scored together. So I'm pressing the coil in, and I'm using my other hand just to support the joint to make sure that it doesn't separate. And this is a stylus tool, which is a really good tool just to smooth out clay coils. And then once I've smoothed it out, I just go over the surface with a damp piece of chamois leather just to take away any tool marks or fingerprints, and it creates a nice smooth bond. And then on the outside of the box, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just scoring into the outside edge, putting a bit of slip on, and then I'm going to add a small coil of clay just to reinforce the joint on the outside. With clay that's got a bit more moisture in it, you don't always necessarily have to add a coil of clay, but just with hard slab ceramics, it's a good idea to add a coil just to make sure that joint is really firmly attached and it's not going to crack whilst the clay dries, which it can do quite easily. So just blending the coil in, and then using a soft rib tool just to smooth out the surface and scrape away the excess coil. And then once again I go over the area with a damp chamois leather just to smooth it out, and I repeat that process for all of the corners and joints. If you'd like to see how I make these slab boxes in completion, I'll put a link to that video right here now. And then I thought it would be helpful to show you that you can use the slip and score method on lots of different pieces of pottery, including adding handles to mugs and teapots and whatever. It's the same process more or less, just lining up the handle and then putting some marks onto the mug where I want to attach the handle with the little needle tool. And then once I've marked where the handle's going to go, just scoring into the clay with the serrated rib tool. And by the way, what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description to any of the tools that I mention in this video. I'll put a link in the description below, so if you feel like you want to check any of those out, you can. So you score into the clay and then score onto the ends of the handle, apply some slip, and applying slip to both surfaces, and then carefully put the handle in position, make sure it's lined up properly, and then pressing it firmly but gently onto the mug, making sure with a hand inside the mug just to make sure that you don't distort the shape of the mug when you're pressing the handle on. There's the joined handle, and one of the things that I often do with handles is I add a small coil of clay to the area that's been slipped and scored just to make sure that it's really in position firmly, because obviously with a mug it's a good idea to make sure that the handle is going to stay on very firmly because it's going to be lifting hot liquid. I don't always put a coil all the way around the handle, sometimes I just add one to the top edge of the handle too, like just where I'm blending it in right now. If you found this video helpful, do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video. And click on the link to watch my next video, which will be coming up any second now. Thanks for watching, bye!